Hey guys, in today's video we're going to be discussing the top 10 tips I have that can help you zero cycle. So let's get right into it. For number one, who would have guessed, we've got Dance Dance Dance. The reason why Dance 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 is so valuable in zero cycling is because it throws the 134 speed threshold out the window, right? Normally, in the first cycle, right, you have 150 action value compared to 100 with the rest of the cycles, right? That's why 134 allows you to have 2 actions. Now, when you use Dance Dance Dance, specifically at the beginning of a cycle, then that 24% action advance at S5, although all you have to do is just speed tune to whatever superimposition your light cone is, then that 134 suddenly becomes much less, right? At S5, the threshold actually will become 118 if you were to use it at the beginning of the cycle. And that actually is one thing to note, because when you enter the second cycle, how can you get Tingyun's ult up immediately as well? Well, there is my favorite way of doing it, which unfortunately is Ranmei's light cone, because that extra 10 energy at the beginning of the wave makes it so when you have a Vonwaq and a maxed ERR rope, that means that you're at 124.4% energy regen rate on Tingyun, right? Pair that with the fact that due to her technique, she can then gain her ult at the beginning of the cycle, meaning that her skill and then next basic followed by another skill will then put her exactly at 124 energy. So then the extra 10 energy from Ranmei will put her at 130 to use the ult at the beginning of the cycle, right? Now, what do you do if you do not have Ranmei's light cone? There is a way around it. Now, it doesn't benefit every single character because when you want to use Dance 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 in the middle of your cycle, right? So let's say you don't have Tingyun's ult up at the beginning of the second wave. Instead, you're just trying to get the Dance 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 effect active after Tingyun's first action. Then what you want to do is make sure that you use it immediately after your character's turn, your desired character that you want to boost to have 2 actions in the cycle. So for example, let's say you have a 110 speed DPS, right? Immediately after the DPS goes is then when you want to pop the ult on Tingyun. That way you get the maximum benefit from the action advance from the Dance Dance Dance, right? And another really awesome aspect of Dance 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 is that it's not only viable on our best Fox, Tingyun, right? There's other characters that can also benefit largely from the action advance, and characters that might not need other light cones that mainly give energy, right? Because lots of other Harmony light cones give energy, memories of the past, Cogs, Bronya's light cone, you know? And some of those characters that can use Dance 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 are Asta, because Asta's speed boost is actually a very good complement to the action advance. And if you pair it right, you might actually be able to get to a pseudo 200 speed team to have 3 actions. But we'll save that for something else because that's not as realistic as other things, right? Hanya is also a great target for Dance Dance Dance, right? As well, Sparkle's going to be coming out soon, and I believe the Dance 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 is going to be wonderful on Sparkle. So these are just some of the characters and some of the ways that Dance 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 can be a great benefit to help you zero cycle. Next, we've got Ranmei. Ranmei might just be the quintessential zero cycling support, and the reason why is because her technique is so busted that you can use her skill right off the bat without having to use a skill point, and it becomes active for, if you play it right, the entire fight. All you have to do is make sure that Ranmei is a slow Mei, and one of the reasons why I love slow Mei is because her ult never disappears. If she only has 1 action per cycle, that means that she's never going to get to her 3rd turn for her ult to run out of juice, right? And one of the ways to make sure that happens is to just have her under 134 speed, right? 130 is perfect. 132, it doesn't matter. One of the things that you do want to think about is if Ranmei is slower, then that means all your characters are going to have a turn before her and therefore not benefit from the buffs she receives. So in that scenario, having her at 132, if your DPS is slower, can actually be a great benefit, right? Another really, really awesome thing about Ranmei is that when you use her in zero cycling, you can forego the energy regen rope entirely and just go for a break effect rope, which doesn't really help if you go past 180 for the damage boost. However, if you're going against enemies that you can weakness break, then the extra break effect on Ranmei is 100% extremely useful and increases the damage overall and is just a wonderful addition, right? Another aspect of Ranmei, which is just so good, is the 10% speed boost on her talent. This 10% speed boost is essentially the equivalent of like 4.5 speed subs on every single character, which as you know, speed is the hardest thing to roll in Star Rail. And the fact that you get a universal speed buff makes it so if you actually pair that with Dance Dance Dance, the speed requirements of the team to have 2 actions per cycle is almost nothing, right? One of the things to note, though, if you do use Dance 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 with Ron May, you just want to be careful that you don't action advance her to the point where she is getting her 2nd action in the cycle. If that does happen, then you do probably want to run an ERR rope and then pretty much hope for her to get hit, or might have to use an extra skill to get her ult up when she does have her 4th turn, right? Or her 3rd, I guess. Number 3 on the list, we've got Pela. Pela is probably the best debuffer when it comes to zero cycling, and it all boils down to her energy requirements. The fact that she can get a 2-turn ult while running a resolution light cone puts her miles above Silverwolf for a zero cycling scenario, right? Because even though the res pen and the increased defense shred that you get from Silverwolf, it's not AoE, and the AoE is a massive factor in why Pela is just cracked, right? On top of that, you've got her talent, which increases the amount of energy she gains, 10 every time she debuffs a character, once per turn. Additionally, whenever an enemy dies, she gains 5 energy. So pair that with an energy regen rope and resolution, and then you have a 2-turn AoE ult that will give you 56% defense shred, right? Additionally, if you want to use an ice DPS, then because you're going to be skilling with Pela once at least to make sure you get your ult up, then you're going to have an extra 12% ice res that just makes it such a valuable character when you're running an ice DPS like Jingliu or Misha or even Yangqing, right? Another reason why Pela is so great is because her technique, allowing you to decrease their defense by 20% going into the first wave, makes the first wave essentially trivial when it comes to dealing damage and killing them, because once you're at 76%, all you need is essentially one more form of defense shred, and then you're at 100. And once you're at 100, the damage that you can do is crazy, because one of the amazing things about defense shred is that once you have 100% defense shred, the level of the character you're fighting is irrelevant, right? Notably, when you're fighting MOC 12 against a level 95 boss, you're just inherently going to be doing less damage because of their base stats, right? Their base defense is just much higher, and that's just going to decrease the damage that you're doing. However, when their def shred is minus to 0, essentially, right? Negative 100, then the level that they are in comparison to you is just, it doesn't matter. It's useless. And that's one of the reasons why having so much def shred is just a game changer when it comes to dealing massive amounts of damage, right? And one more thing to note about Pela is the only time you don't want to use Pela is when you're fighting a 2-phase boss. Now, it still works. You can still do it. The only problem is that you're going to have a hard time getting your ult up for both phases of the second cycle, right? Or the second wave. And the reason is because if you don't have a hyperspeed Pela, or a Pela who's running, for example, an Eagle set for her to have 3 actions, then you run into the problem where you have to have your ult up right when the turn starts, and then you can pop it, and then you still have your 2 turns to then be able to get Pela's ult up again, right? So you might have to forego a Pela ult on one side or one version of the characters. Next, we've got my man Welt. Welt is a wonderful 4th slot when it comes to zero cycling, because his debuffs, his imprisonment, right, essentially will buff the team while also helping you survive, not only thanks to his technique, because his technique is probably one of the busted techniques in the game. There's a few. Very similar to Jingliu's, right? You have the dimension, which affects every character coming in the next wave, right? And that imprisonment, right, is going to decrease their action value, decrease their speed a bit, and that is a massive buff to the survivability of your team, because then you're going to be taking less damage overall, right? And another great part about Welt is when you use his skill and when you use his ult, you get extra speed debuffs, right? And these speed debuffs might be able to actually help you take one less hit throughout the cycle. And, all it takes is one hit from a monkey, or, one, AoE blast that just puts wind shear on everybody, and then you just slowly starts whittling down your health until you die, right? So for that reason, being able to push back the enemy's action value and possibly not have to deal with one of their attacks is why Welt is a great side grade to a sustain slot when it comes to zero cycling, right? And another great benefit of Welt is that you can actually use resolution on him because he's a nihility, right? So on top of the 12% vulnerability that you're going to get when he uses his ult, you can also get up to 16% death shred when you hit everybody. And since his ult is AoE, and since his skill is also semi-AoE with the bounce, that means that you are going to be able to get some reliable bounces, or death shreds rather, on all of the characters. Now, there is one problem when it comes to Welt, and that is his energy requirements, right? Because he does have a 4-turn ult unless you use tutorial, and if you do use tutorial, then you are going to have to pair him with a Pela, for example, to make sure that they actually do have the defense down to be able to gain the energy. Because when you do use tutorial, you are able to get a 3-turn ult exactly, and that is a problem if you do want to run resolution. Next on the list, we've got Vonwaq. Now, Vonwaq is a great relic set to use on a support character because it can actually allow them to get 3 actions in the first cycle if used correctly, right? All you have to do is make sure your character is fast enough to jump up at the top of the line, and then they will get their next turn, and then usually thanks to that action advance, you are able to get a 3rd turn. But the only thing that you need to worry about when it comes to Vonwaq is farming it, because farming Vonwaq is hell, right? Because the Talia set is like, it's whatever, right? And just farming anything other than World 7 or 8, or maybe 9 in the future is just not as worth. So in my opinion, just use a self-modeling resin on 1 energy regen rope on a Vonwaq, and then maybe just craft a couple orbs and hope you get some HP or defense piece for your orb, and then you're done, right? Now, one of the great things about Vonwaq is not only the action advance helps you get the extra turn, that 5% energy is wonderful for many characters, right? Tingyun notably, Pela is great. The 5% energy makes it so you pair that with a max energy regen rope, and then now your 119 energy regen goes up to 124, right? And if you don't want to use Vonwaq, actually, you could use Penacony, because Penacony will give you the 5% energy as well. And if you don't want to forego the extra turn by getting the action advance, then you will be able to get a little bit of extra damage with Penacony. However, right, when it comes to the action advance of Vonwaq, it makes it so if you want, you can actually run your support a little bit slower than your DPS, but then since their action advance to the beginning of the cycle, they will be able to apply their buffs before your DPS goes, right? Notably Ron Mei, because if you want to action advance Ron Mei, she can go, but then when the 3rd go around of your characters comes, she's still behind everybody, so then you don't have to worry about her ult running out, right? Now for number 6, I wasn't actually sure if I wanted to include this, but it's kind of hard to not, because thanks to Dance 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 as well as Ron Mei's talent, it makes a Hyperspeed Bronya doable, right? Before, it was hard as hell to get 180 speed on Bronya, who has a very low base speed. Very tough. However, thanks to Dance 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 and thanks to the speed boost that Ron Mei will give you, 180 speed or pseudo 180 speed is now a much more viable option, right? Now, the great benefits when it comes to using Bronya at this speed is that when she goes basic skill, it allows your DPS essentially to have their turn and then 2 boosted Bronya turns while only being at a -1 skill point deficit, right? And if you want to use Bronya's Light Cone, then that means your first cycle is actually going to be skill point neutral, right? Which is wonderful. Now, why would you want to go for a Hyperspeed Bronya? It's very simple. It allows your DPS character to have no speed investment whatsoever. Now, you do need to note that if your character is a destruction and they're super slow, you might need just a couple of speed subs to make sure that they go. And from the calculations I've done, that does come out to about 106. So if Bronya is exactly at 180, or pseudo 180, then that will mean that you do want your DPS to be at 106, so that way they still get their first action before Bronya gets her second action, right? That's quite important. Now, another amazing benefit of having a Hyperspeed Bronya is the fact that you can actually have extremely good ult uptime consistency. Because now that you have 3 actions per cycle, your ult is guaranteed to come up twice per game, right? And of course, building speed, it is a little bit tough on, the most speed I've ever had on an energy regen rope has been 2. I've gotten only 3 of them with speed, and never once has it rolled into speed a single time. So I actually opt for an HP rope on Bronya because I care more about her extra action than I do getting her ult up 1 turn early, right? And she still gets her ult up the first cycle. Although I'm not sure about that, because I actually use Ranmei's Light Cone, so not sure on those. Don't hold me to that. Now, Broken Keel is a wonderful option for your support's planar ornaments, and the reason is because Effect Res is actually a wonderful stat to build when you're going for zero cycling, right? The reason being is that it will help you not only resist dot debuffs, but it might actually reduce the RNG factor, because now you might be able to resist the imprisonment or resist Kafka's domination, although that's very, very tough to actually resist. But this Effect Res that you can build, now given it's only 10 extra percent, but 10 extra percent is very, very nice considering that you're also going to be getting a 10% crit damage boost to your DPS, right? Now, when you do want to build Effect Res on certain characters, it is tough for a few of them, notably Tingyun, for example. She wants a very good attack, or she wants to cap out her attack percentage at, around, it depends what the base attack of the DPS that you're trying to buff is, depending if they're a 5-star and whether they have a 5-star light cone, then you are going to want to go a little bit above 2500 attack. But since you want to put attack into Tingyun, you also want to put a little bit of HP and defense to make her survive. So building a little bit of effect res is tough in that scenario, but it still works, of course, right? Additionally, Ranmei, right? She needs a ton of break effect. However, if you can get the break effect thresholds, and if you don't have too much speed threshold to make, if you're using a slow Mei, of course, then building effect res on a character like that is a great, great option. And interestingly enough, having an effect res, having a little bit more effect res might actually benefit you more than having some HP and defense, for the reason that if you can resist a wind shear or resist a burn or a shock or whatever, right? That's essentially the same thing as just having a little bit more HP and defense to survive things, but you now have the added benefit of being able to resist CCs if your effect res is high enough. Now for tip number 8, it's simply to build your characters to be tanky, right? You want to prioritize HP and defense specifically on the body and orb of your characters, and even if they have good damage potential, right? Even if they can push out some relatively good damage, I'm looking at like a Silver Wolf here or a Yukong, for example, right? You kind of just want to forget about that damage, because when you're going for a like triple buffing setup to zero cycle, right? Then the damage output from your DPS is just so high that getting that little bit of extra percentages from your supports isn't worth having to reset the runs because they got targeted a little too much and then now they're dead, right? So opting for HP and defense pieces to make your characters more tanky, right, will overall just help reduce the RNG of your runs and will help you just survive and have more opportunities to then get further in the cycle and learn how you want to approach it and when to use skills and when to use ult and when to use basics, And additionally, when it comes to building characters tanky, there's one stat that is very beneficial to build, and that is break effect. Because break effect is very easy to increase your damage from, right? All you need to do is just increase your break effect stat, then everything else just boils down to the level, the defense shred, the resistance of the enemies, and any vulnerability debuffs you have, right? So when it comes to that, you can essentially just toss on break effect on your support characters, have them be the one to break, and then you'll still get very good damage output while not having to invest into a crit ratio or increasing your attack or such like that, right? Just focus on HP, defense, speed, and break effect, and these 4 stats are probably the best stats you can have for lots of supports. Now for number 9, how could I not make a separate section for Tingyun, right? Tingyun is such a great support when it comes to zero cycling, and the reason is because every single aspect of her kit is wonderful, right? Her technique, starting the battle with an ult, might just be one of the best zero cycling techniques that are out there, right? Tingyun's ult, right? Having ult uptime on, I want to say almost every single character is a massive buff, and because you cannot gain energy from other sources, maybe Tingyun for example, or Ho rather, then the energy regain that you can gain on Tingyun is just invaluable, right? It is so good, right? Additionally, right, the benediction with her, I believe it's E1, maybe E2, right, makes it so when your characters get an extra kill, now they're not just gaining 10 energy, they're gaining 15 energy, right? So you're not just gaining energy from using Tingyun's ult, you also can then gain energy every single time the character kills, and if they have 3 turns of benediction, right, that means that every single turn that they're able to get a kill, that's going to be an extra 5 energy, right? And that is a wonderful aspect to increasing your ult uptime with any DPS, right? On top of that, the fact that you can gain speed, right, when your character uses their ult, now maybe that's E1 or E2, right, that makes it so you can essentially forego attack boots completely. Now, there's many ways of, foregoing attack boots. Now that I think about it, many of the tips actually kind of boil down to just increasing the damage of your DPS as much as possible and having them move twice or 3 times with Bronya, for example, right? Without having to give up that attack boost, right? Because speed boots is a relatively you notice the difference when it attack boots versus speed boots. Let's just say that, right? So the fact that you can use attack boots, gain 20% speed when you pop your ult, makes it so now the speed thresholds on your character is much, much, much easier to hit, right? To get your 2 actions per cycle. And for the last tip, just have fun with it, right? Zero cycling is not going to give you anything, unfortunately, right? There's no benefits, there's no rewards. It's simply just a way of testing your own characters versus the endgame and seeing how strong you are in comparison, right? You're just trying to speedrun, see how much damage you can output, see how fast you can do it, how you can build strategies to make your characters go in certain orders, scaling when you want to scale, basicking, using your ults for certain situations, right? It's just for fun. And for that reason, also, just go for 1 cycles. In my opinion, 1 cycles can actually be just as entertaining or satisfying because it allows you to then go for different comps, because you are slightly tied down to using the best supports if you want to zero cycle, right? Ranmei, Tingyun, Bronya, right? These characters are what boils down to zero cycling. Like, they are the backbone of zero cycling. So when you then can go for just a 1 cycle, it allows you to have more fun with different team comps, right? Test new characters, test different strategies, and at the end of the day, it's a gacha game, right? We're just here to have fun, just build our waifus and be done with it, and I think that's all I got. So once again, thanks for watching, and please like, comment, and subscribe, of course, and I appreciate it very, very much. So thank you, and adios.